the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Dear conspiracy theorists, you were right again. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another Legally Armed America video. I'm, of course, Paul Glasgow here, the one and only Truth Pimp, dealing you a vulgar display of logic and reason on a daily basis. And today I take a deep dive into another ho-hum story that we're supposed to just ignore. The government using us as test subjects. You see, while you've been popping pills for a mysterious joint pain, brain fog, weird meat allergies, your own government has been playing God with insects, that's right, insects, on our soil for decades. Declassified documents and archived military reports just resurfaced, highlighted by Dr. Robert Malone, showing the U.S. military ran large-scale tick and insect field tests as part of a Cold War biowarfare program, including open-air releases and tracking with Geiger counters and field teams. I'm not making this up. This is all verifiable. I'll do my best to post some links down below, but it's everywhere. Google it. You see, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of weaponized bugs, entomological warfare programs, and a Pentagon so obsessed with vector delivery systems that they literally designed bombs to spray fleas and other insects over test ranges. I bet they didn't do that in their own neighborhoods. While the experts swear that Lyme predates all this and was here long before Plum Island, which I'm about to talk about, the timing, the locations, and the secrecy all line up just a little bit too perfectly for me to feel comfortable about this story. This month, March 2026, Dr. Robert Malone published a Substack deep dive linking declassified U.S. bioweapons programs to today's tick-borne disease nightmare, drawing on dozens of primary sources like Army reports, declassified test summaries, and congressional investigations into insect warfare. Yeah, the fact that we have to actually talk about something called insect warfare is a little bit too much for me. From the 1950s through the late 1960s, the Pentagon openly explored entomological warfare using insects as delivery systems for disease. They tested how insects spread, how far they traveled, and how effectively they could simulate a biological attack on cities, ships, and even farming regions. You literally had programs like Project 112, more than 100 field trials, some involving biological agents released over parts of the United States and its territories. Operation Big Itch tested munitions loaded with fleas to see if cluster bombs could scatter biting insects over a target area. That's our federal government using stuff like this and letting us be the test subjects. Congress later forced the Pentagon to admit many of these tests, but only after media exposure and relentless pressure, decades after the fact that when they actually took place. And in 2019, lawmakers literally had to pass an amendment ordering the Pentagon to go back and investigate whether ticks were ever used as bioweapons between 1950 and 1975. Ask yourself this question. If all of these tests and all of this stuff that the Pentagon was doing was harmless, why'd Congress have to drag it out of them? Why'd they have to pass an amendment to get them to release the information that they already had access to? Now let's talk about Plum Island. Just off of Long Island Sound is the Plum Island Animal Disease Center. There is such a thing, actually. Originally run by the U.S. Army Chemical Corps as part of America's biological warfare infrastructure before being transferred to the USDA in 1969. I'm not even sure I'm comfortable with that being transferred to the USDA. I'd almost rather the Pentagon have access to that. I don't trust either one of those branches. One of them, the USDA, just has the guise of appearing to be innocent, so you're less likely to distrust them. Now, officially, Plum Island says that it has never conducted Lyme disease research, and mainstream experts argue that Lyme disease bacterium and its tick vectors were in North America long before the lab opened. Sorry if I don't believe you. I know where those studies came from. Don't trust you either. Studies looking at old museum specimens of mice and ticks found DNA from the Lyme bacterium decades before modern cases exploded and in areas far beyond Connecticut. But here's the part that doesn't sit right with me and didn't sit right with other people all along, hence this report. Plum Island sat just across the water from where Lyme, Connecticut became ground zero in the 1970s. The facility has deep roots in Cold War biowarfare research. What a coincidence. It handled foreign animal diseases under high secrecy, and the United States government has an admitted track record of open-air tests on unwitting Americans. That's a whole lot of stuff that lines up for somebody to come out and say, wasn't me. So while the official line is no Lyme research, no lab leak, Malone and others argue the probability of lab enhancement or accidental release of some tick-borne agents that it's not zero, especially given how many files remain classified or heavily redacted that have not been unclassified. So whether you buy the lab leak claim or not, the fact remains. The U.S. government experimented with insects and biological agents in ways they hid from the public for half a century. That alone should have every American side-eyeing the official story. Now, another interesting character enters the picture. Willy Burgdorfer. Willy Burgdorfer was the scientist credited with discovering the Lyme bacterium in the early 1980s. Malone highlights something most people never hear. Burgdorfer spent much of his early career working on tick-borne disease for, here it comes, U.S. government programs, including research with clear military interest. But there's still nothing to see here. These are all coincidences. There are claims echoed in interviews and later reporting that Burgdorfer detected more than one pathogen in patient samples, including what he called a Swiss agent, quote unquote, but that only one organism became the official story while other findings were effectively buried. After his death, journalists and researchers alleged that boxes of his old materials pointed to a more complex picture of co-infections than was ever admitted to Lyme patients or the general public. That's some lying bastards right there. Put yourself in the shoes of a chronic Lyme patient who's been denied treatment, gaslit, and told it's all in their head, while they learn after the fact that the discoverer of the disease organism also had ties to covert tick programs by the federal government. Is it any wonder why the American people feel like freaking lab rats? Now, sadly, this isn't one weird tick story. It fits a pattern. Powerful agencies running experiments first, then asking permission or forgiveness decades later. Tuskegee, for instance. For 40 years, black men with syphilis were studied without proper treatment so the government could watch the disease progress. MKUltra, CIA-funded mind control programs dosed Americans with LSD, conducted electroshock and physiological torture, often without real informed consent by the patients they were testing all this on. Operation Sea Spray and related tests. The Navy and Army released bacteria over places like San Francisco in part to model how a biologic attack would spread through a city. PBS and Declassified histories now openly admit that hundreds of domestic tests were run to see how aerosols move through the subways, buildings, and entire urban areas within communities and cities. Decades later, the federal government shrugs their shoulders and goes, "It was for national security, dude." So when people hear about insect warfare tests, Plum Island, Fort Detrick, and classified tick programs, they aren't reaching for tinfoil. They're literally connecting the dots the government itself sketched in the margins. So the claims are that the evidence doesn't show that Plum Island had anything to do with developing and creating Lyme disease, even though it sat right across the river from Lyme. But what the evidence does say is that the pathogen is old, the government quietly experimented with insects and biological agents, outbreaks surged in the same area, the exact same regional geographic area, that biowarfare programs exploded and then went dark. Meanwhile, new tick-linked conditions like alpha-gal syndrome, the red meat allergy tied to Lone Star tick bites, you've heard about that, and I'll run a story on that, they're now documented by health agencies and their geographic spread keeps expanding. Nobody in power seems in a rush to seriously investigate environmental drivers, corporate chemicals, or past military releases that might be making all this worse. So it's kind of funny when no one sees something like this on the horizon coming our way, and the people responsible for, quote, protecting us from that, when they don't see this as a big deal, but we do, kind of makes you wonder if they don't know what the end result is supposed to be because we're actually part of their test. So they're not stopping their own tests. I mean, prove me wrong. You basically end up with this uneasy truth. Nature created the ticks and the bugs, but human decisions, including classified programs, may have poured gasoline on the fire after all. If we didn't create it, we certainly didn't make it any better, that's for sure. Back to Congress. No trust in them, but even they smelled the smoke. In 2019, House members ordered a federal investigation into whether the Pentagon ever turned ticks into bioweapons and whether any escaped into the wild. That alone tells you this is no fringe question. It's in the federal record. Yet full answers are still missing on this. Yet key Cold War files are still missing on this. Like, classified still, redacted, or they can't even find the files. They know they're there, they just don't know where they are. The public still doesn't have a complete accounting of what was tested, where, and on whom. We know who, but they won't tell us. Lyme patients and their doctors are left to fight in the dark while agencies hide behind redactions and no comment comments. So what do? Well, first of all, share this video because it's going to open up some doors. It will show people that will think I'm not telling the truth. They're going to Google to see, I think that guy's full of crap. When they Google it, they're going to find that I'm right, and they're probably going to pass this on to somebody else. You know, my heart truly hurts for the people who have been suffering with Lyme disease for decades, and the federal government is gaslighting them the whole time, telling them, oh, it's just an old thing that we don't know anything about, when they in fact created it. And think about it this way also. When you create something, and a lot of times you know how to decreate it, right? How to fix it. If you build something, you know how to unbuild it, so to speak. I wonder how many secrets the federal government has that maybe they would be exposing themselves if they told somebody how to deconstruct Lyme disease and fix it, cure it. Would that expose them as to the people who actually created it? And maybe that's why they won't talk about this is the cure. Friends, we have to demand full declassification of all entomological warfare and bioweapons files from 1950 onward. Call your reps, email, take your health back, learn tick avoidance, support local food, question every one-size-fits-all medical narrative. For Lyme and chronic tick-borne sufferers, dig into the independent literature, patient advocacy groups, and protocols that have helped others. Don't let a dismissive doctor be the final word, because that happens a lot. The conspiracy here is not that every disease is cooked up in a lab. The conspiracy is that your government ran dangerous experiments, kept them secret, and still hasn't come clean about the full fallout. That's not a theory of mine. That's documented in history. Folks, if you're living with Lyme disease, alpha-gal, or some mysterious chronic condition, you're not crazy. You are living in the shadow of programs that you never consented to being a part of. Drop your story in the comments. Comment Lab Pet No More if you're done being a data point. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that bell. And always remember to stay armed, be dangerous, and God bless America. See you guys tomorrow. Don't forget, guys, if you're looking for a book to educate yourself and to educate the idiots out there who can't think for themselves regarding mass shootings, go to damnliars.net. Again, damnliars.net, and get my brand new book, Damn Liars.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.